Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm the Mellow Mama, and today I'll be discussing how to handle people that disagree with your parenting decisions and style. As a respectful parent, somebody that's really into objectivism and conscious living, I have found it a very frequent experience to come across people that are either unfamiliar with the choices that I make as far as how I raise Donovan, the way that I talk to Donovan, interact with him in general, some of the reasoning that I have for things I've eliminated from my parenting style, such as labels, rewards, punishments, screen time. And I've also experienced, when people aren't familiar, a little bit of a pushback. Some people get a little defensive. Some people become sort of insulting. Some people have a tendency to sort of justify. My little brother just went to his first day of work. So cute. Some people try to justify their reasoning for why they disagree with me and why they do exactly what I've eliminated. And some people try to literally do exactly what I say I would really prefer not to do to my son. Needless to say, I'm not alone in this. It's something that many of you have asked me questions about, and I find that really interesting. So I'm going to just give you guys my tips on how I handle the situation of basically raising your child in a way that's not mainstream, just to give you some clarity on how I've dealt with that in a positive way and how we can basically be an example and lead the way, because most things that aren't mainstream end up being sort of revolutionary. And I truly believe in right parenting. I truly believe in objectivist parenting. I think that it does have the power to literally change the world, because our relationships are everything in our society. The way that we treat our kids is how they will treat other people. And if we treat our kids with respect, with an open heart, open ears, open eyes, they're going to treat people that they interact with in their lifetime in that same loving, respectful way. And that can only have a positive impact on the world that we live in. So let's take the advice that I'm going to give you in this video and keep in mind the entire time that by being a part of this, it's sort of a movement in my opinion, and I think that's a beautiful thing. You've got to be proud of it, but we're going to do that in a positive way. First of all, I want to reference Don Miguel Ruiz's book, The 4 Agreements. This book has nothing to do with parenting and everything to do with parenting at the same time. I would recommend it to everybody. You may have already read it. And today, I'm going to refer to the second agreement, which is do not take anything personally. Here's what Don has to say about that. Whatever happens around you, don't take it personally. Nothing other people do is because of you. It is because of themselves. All people live in their own dream, in their own mind. They are in a completely different world from the one we live in. When we take something personally, we make the assumption that they know what's in our world, and we try to impose our world on their world. Even when a situation seems so personal, even if others insult you directly, it has nothing to do with you. What they say, what they do, and the opinions they give are according to the agreements they have in their own minds. Taking things personally makes you easy prey for these predators, the black magicians. They can hook you easily with one little opinion and feed you whatever poison they want, and because you take it personally, you eat it up. Hopefully that resonated with you guys like it does with me. That book in particular is such a good read because every time I pick it up, it's a wake-up call and a great reminder. In the case of people disagreeing with your parenting choices, not taking things personally is so important. Like Don Miguel says, people are living in their own world all the time. Everything that we think, do, feel, it's based on all of our experiences, all of the things that we've sort of manifested in our own lives, all the things that we've been taught, and everyone has a different experience. Along with that, anytime somebody has a negative opinion or something not kind to say, it's usually, in my experience, derived out of fear. They're afraid of feeling insecure about their own personal decisions when it comes to their children. They feel guilty because perhaps they agree with what you're saying, but have already raised their kids and they didn't do those things. They might feel guilty because their kids are maybe the same age and they think maybe it's too late to sort of apply some of these respectful guidelines. They're afraid that they've made bad choices, or on the other hand, they really truly have deeply rooted beliefs when it comes to raising children. Their thinking on child rearing is completely different, and that makes them fearful for you, your relationship with your kids, and for your kids sometimes. They're afraid that your kids are going to become some sort of unruly, horrible nuisance or something, and that's going to start to control you or manipulate you or have a horrible time in life. Maybe they're afraid that your kids won't be safe because one big thing for respectful parents is that we give our kids space, especially when they're playing or exploring. We give our kids lots of alone time, lots of space. Of course, right parents know that this is in a safe setting and we never just abandon our kids, but somebody that's not familiar might think that and literally be afraid for our kids' circumstance. So keep in mind that nothing anybody's going to throw at you is about you. It's not personal. It's coming from their own fear of any of those things or maybe something different. My second piece of advice would be to be gentle. We want to apply the things that we're learning about respectful relationships to every person. Like I said, respectful parenting is going to change the world. I truly, firmly believe that. And it's because of how our kids will treat each other and treat everyone around them. We should lead by example and start doing that now. If somebody insults you, if somebody criticizes you or even just gives you a judgmental glance or a passive-aggressive comment, a catty remark, don't take it personally. But if you do, if you get to the point where you're like, wow, that was so rude, that was so harsh, or who are they to tell me how to raise my kids, you know, it goes into this horrible cycle where you start feeling crappy and saying negative things, and you get to their level. That's in the level of fear. You're afraid of what they think about you, what they're going to say about you, or how your relationship is going to be affected with that person, especially if they're a relative. It's all fear-based, and we want to get out of that cycle always. We want to avoid that and be in a more positive realm, especially in front of our children. So try your very, very best to be gentle and respectful with the people that are, you know, sometimes kind of protesting what you're deciding to do with your children. That means avoiding attacking other people for what they're deciding to do with their kids, insulting them. Number 3, that causes those others' attacks and insults, developing a sort of holier-than-thou complex where you think that because you are making consciously respectful choices with your children, that you are automatically a better parent than anybody that's not following these same guidelines. I know it's very, very hard not to develop this complex. I'm being completely straightforward here. I'll be anywhere, you know, the grocery store, story time at a library, wherever, and I see someone that's being blatantly disrespectful to their children, and it's very hard for me to witness. Sometimes I'm in tears because I know the effect that that's having on their relationship and on the child particularly. And it's very hard for me not to think, I would never do that to my son, because it's true, I would never interact with him that way. However, you have to understand that this information is not exactly easy to come by. People are now beginning to talk about RIE and objectivism, objectivist parenting, but when I was pregnant, I couldn't find this literature in a normal bookstore. I couldn't go to a Target or something and pick up Rosalind Ross's book. I definitely didn't find Janet Lansbury's material or Magda Gerber's books in a Barnes & Noble. I found material that was actually completely supportive of behaviorism and things that I strongly advise against in mainstream bookstores. And that's where we go to find information, to get knowledge. And it's a shame, but people are being misinformed about how to form a beautiful, loving, respectful relationship with their children, and therefore think, well, I'm just as educated on the subject of parenting. They're just educated in a different realm completely. So you have to be empathetic and understand that they haven't been exposed to this way of thinking, and perhaps if they were, they would have a really big change of heart and maybe a huge realization. It is what it is. Remember that we are not better than anyone. We have a responsibility as RI parents to stand up for the things that we find to be true and relevant and good with this philosophy, really. However, we don't have any right to, stoop down to anybody's level of insulting, attacking, or, becoming sort of stuck up or snooty about our decisions. Anytime you have a disagreement with someone or you're on a different page, there's no way it's ever going to be resolved or somebody's going to be more enlightened by attacks or insults or criticism. These things are only going to make you guys farther apart when it comes to understanding. You want to become closer by being gentle, by taking the sort of Meryl Streep approach. If you guys love Meryl Streep like I do, you might have heard how she is to talk to. I've heard many people in interviews discussing having a simple conversation with Meryl, and they always say that she's such a great observer and such a great listener, sort of with her chin up and nodding like this. Okay. She's always looking for something, to pull. And I think that's the approach that we should take with people, not with our nose in the air, you know what I mean, but more gentle, listening, looking for something, looking for the details, for the clues as to why this person's feeling so passionately about what they're saying or the choices that they're making, and then reacting to that feeling and that sense of understanding, just like we would with our kids when they're in a state of big heightened emotions or reactions. It's a time to really connect, not to become defensive or mean. The third tip is to be open-minded. This is such an important aspect of being a rational, conscious human being, but in general, know that you don't know everything. And sometimes people are giving you their advice or their perspective because they've had a specific experience or encounter where it really truly benefited them, and they just want you to know, in case, once again, because of fear, in case they can help you. They don't want you to experience something that they experienced or that their child experienced, and in their mind they're looking out for you. So be open-minded. Maybe what they have to say will make you think a little bit differently. Maybe their approach will be something that you're actually kind of interested in. Another way of being open-minded would be to sort of look at the big picture of things. Personal example of this big picture perspective would be my son and screens. I don't allow Donovan to watch any screens, have any screen time whatsoever, and this sort of becomes a problem in certain circumstances. For example, the gym. I take Donovan to this kids club area while I work out. Not every day, but a lot of the time, and they do have a TV playing in the room. Now, there is an enclosed area where there's no TV, and it's sort of got toys for smaller children. However, I decide not to limit him to that small space because of this little TV. Instead, I decided to keep an open mind and sort of just observe Donovan the first day that I had him there and see what he does in response to the TV being there. And to my surprise, as usual, Donovan has no interest in the screen. Because Donovan is so engaged in his independent play and building and interacting with actual passive toys like blocks or little puzzles, maybe even a doll, the TV doesn't really interest him and it doesn't entertain him whatsoever. So I could have been sort of more neurotic and spazzed out that they had a TV and maybe complained and told them that please turn it off while my son's there. But do you see how that seems like so intense? It was so nice for me to be able to just keep a relaxed mindset and say, okay, how can I stay calm, I guess, about this and find a real solution as opposed to making a complaint. So if you're somebody like me in that situation where you would not want your kids to be exposed to screens, but they are sort of gravitating toward them, I would just let the facilitator know. Tell them in a very gentle, loving way, hey, I don't expose my child to screens, and I would just really appreciate it if you could maybe, direct their attention to other things if you find that they're gravitating toward watching that. And I know this is sort of contradictory because we avoid direction when it comes to our children's interest in Rai. However, when it comes to something like that, I'm okay because I feel that screens are really damaging. There are several examples of this open-mindedness. To remember that it's not the end of the world if one person has a sort of disrespectful interaction. Your kids, because you are raising them and you're the person they're exposed to probably 24/7, are going to be able to interpret what's respectful and what isn't. When somebody talks to my son in a way that's disrespectful, he literally looks at them like, why are they talking to me like this? When somebody holds Donovan, abruptly takes him out of my arms or something without asking him, you can tell that he's uneasy. So don't be so worried that one little thing is going to make a huge impact on your kids. Keep an open mind. Stay as relaxed as possible because you're the most important figure in their life and you're leading the example here. My fourth tip would be to educate yourself. It is great to use resources like YouTube. You can learn a lot from other people and the research that they've done, the books that they've read. However, always do your own research. Always read the books that the people are referring to if you can, if you have the time. Make a real conscious effort to get a hold of the information that they're referencing, whether it be a study, a documentary, a specific expert on the topic. In my case, I always talk about books. Really delve into that yourself and gather your own opinion and your own interpretation on that material. There's nothing worse than having an extreme opinion, a radical opinion on something that isn't backed up with evidence. You don't want to be this person that talks a lot but knows very little. In all honesty, the best thing to do is to become a listener. And when you are educated, it becomes sort of fun and entertaining to hear people's reasoning as to why certain decisions are better than others, especially when it comes to parenting, because there is so much bountiful evidence that really supports respectful parenting, attachment parenting, objectivist parenting, gentle parenting choices. In the same way, there's plenty of research that proves that behaviorism and this sort of authoritative style of parenting can be extremely damaging and will cause lasting psychological effects on our children as adults. You have to educate yourself on those studies, on those resources, because you don't want to be caught off guard, and especially not if you're somebody that's quick to have big reactions or passionate emotional reactions to things. You don't want to have some sort of big passionate emotional response to someone's criticism and then not know why you feel that way, and you don't know exactly why it makes sense to make that choice. So educate yourself. Fifth tip would be to focus on what you like about what another person is doing when it comes to their interactions with your children. If somebody, let's say a nanny or a spouse or a relative of some sort, a friend maybe, is interacting with your child in a way that doesn't coincide with respectful parenting, first of all, take a deep breath and don't jump down their throat. It's hard to watch. You might run into times, and actually it's very likely that you'll run into times, even yourself, where you gravitate toward the norms and you interact with your child in a disrespectful way, non-intentionally. And you have to understand that, of course, that's going to happen with the other people in your life, especially if they're not familiar with the people that I discuss on this channel, their way of thinking, their research, what they stand for. The best thing that you can do is observe the behavior that you really like and that you know is respectful, and sort of emphasize that when it happens. So as opposed to focusing on the behavior that you think is negative or the interaction that you see as negative or disrespectful, wait for something positive. Wait for a respectful interaction that you can say, wow, I really like when you talk to my son that way. I love how you're talking to him. That way people don't feel like they're being attacked. And I know this one's a little bit tricky because at some point you have to sort of point out, if you're going to be around this person a lot, in a gentle way, again, why you make that choice, what the thinking is behind it. But don't do it in the moment, because you never want to make somebody feel uncomfortable or like they're doing something wrong. That's a way to make them feel defensive and like they probably don't want to hang out with you anymore, or that they feel like weird about interacting with your kids. And that's the last thing that you want, especially with family. So look for the positive things, look for things that are respectful interactions, and really let them know that, hey, that's really respectful, like what you're doing is perfect, I love how you're talking to them. Or wait for a quiet time, like long after it's happened, to explain. And this is tricky, but it's really important, I think, to kind of like give it a second and then later be like, hey, so I know this is gonna sound funny, and I know it's not normal, like it's something that you've probably never heard before, but I actually avoid praise in my parenting style. I know it's so weird. You can emphasize the fact that it's funny, like these are a lot of the things that you learn as a respectful parent seem like, so they're not mainstream, so it's against what we've been taught and how we've been interacted with as children. So you have to understand the other person, that like this is just normal, unfortunately, and everybody's learning. It's a learning experience for everybody. Which brings me to my last tip. You have to remember that you are an example. People are not very familiar with right parenting and respectful decision making when it comes to the parent-child relationship, which means that you might be the first person that they interact with that talks about it. And you want them to have a good interpretation of right, because it's a beautiful thing to recognize the potential of a great relationship, a respectful, loving relationship with our children. And like I said, it's life-changing, it's world-changing. I love what Maya Angelou has to say. I refer to this quote all the time. She says, when you learn, teach. When you get, give. And that's so relevant for Rye and the mission that Magda Gerber had, I think, and Emmy Pickler and Janet Lansbury and Lisa Sunbury, Gerber, Rosalind Ross, all the people that I admire so much. And if you're watching this, I'm sure you admire them too. And we have a job to do. You know, we need to educate people, enlighten them in a kind, loving, respectful way. That way they can do the same. You don't want to turn people away from respectful parenting. You want to invite them in. And you never know whose life you're going to change, whether it be someone's baby or a parent or somebody who's expecting or somebody that's planning to have kids 10 years from the time that you meet them. And on that note, that's the end of this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I truly appreciate it. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel, give this video a thumbs up, and leave me a comment below, but just please keep it positive. No comments about who said what to you about your decisions as a parent. Just, you know, keep it light, guys. Let's encourage each other, let's uplift each other, and I hope to see you on my next video. Thank you.